Welcome to Off Court Cuts with myself, Greg Rosetsky. We've got Kevin Palmer and Ashley Neves. We've got a special guest today with us. We've got Nick Lester, in my opinion, the best lead commentator in the business. He's worked for the BBC. He's working for TNT at the moment, the World Feed, Tennis Channel. You name any network, he's worked for them. He was an ex-player, he's a journalist, and now he commentates all around the world on the very best matches. So Nick, I want to ask you, what was your day like? How many matches did you do? And how do you prepare for these things?
Thanks for having me on, guys. Nice to be here. So my day started at 9 o'clock this morning when I left the hotel in Melbourne. I got to Melbourne Park for about 10 o'clock. Today I did 3 matches. So I did 2 matches for Tennis Australia on the World Feed. I did Musetti and Sonego, and then I did Anisimova, her second match on Margaret Court. So that was back-to-back. And then I had a break of about an hour and a half, and I just did Sinner for TNT. So busy day. Fortunate here to be sort of working for 2 different people, so that's great. But obviously, it does make my days a bit longer. But yeah, it's been fantastic. It's a brilliant event. It's probably my favorite major, I have to say now, just in terms of the way they produced it. And yeah, it's just great to be here.
And the other thing is, you talk about preparation. So you do your preparation the night before with notes, or do you just naturally know it? Or are you really taking the lead in between the match and taking data during the match to ask certain questions? Because being a lead is so much more difficult than being the pundit, which is quite an easy job compared to what you have to do.
Yeah, a bit of everything, Greg. Preparation starts, it's probably 2 hours before the match. But I'll do some in the hotel before I leave. I'll do some when I arrive on site. I'll look at the match notes that are produced by the ITF. They have bullet points. I then pick out what I think is relevant in terms of match notes that I have there. I'll then go through, as the tournament goes on, I'll go through the tournament statistics, which are important. We have obviously a significant number of databases here that we can use that the tournament collates, which is great because as the tournament goes on, you then get to sort of look at what players are doing well, what they're not doing well. I go through transcripts a lot, post-match interviews, pre-match interviews, pre-tournament interviews. That's all available to us. I go back and look at head-to-heads. So if today Sonego plays Musetti, I'm looking back at when their last meeting was. What happened in that meeting? Was one player tired? It was Paris. Was it at the end of the year? Yes, I remember it well. So all these things, telling the story, trying to paint the picture and tell the story of what is relevant to the viewer. That's the most important thing from my perspective. Trying to, as I always say, add something to the coverage. That really is my job. My job is not to get in the way of the coverage. My job is to try and bring something to the coverage, and that's what I've tried to do pretty much my whole career.
Amazing. You've worked with Greg a few times, right, Nick?
Absolutely.
And I think the thing from Greg's laughing over here. The thing from my perspective when listening to you commentate, I actually listened to you on TNT earlier with the Sinner match. I think one of the most underrated things that a commentator can do is be silent, and I think you do a great job at being quiet during the moments where the viewer should really be enjoying the match, and then when to speak. One of the challenges we have with this podcast is we talk over each other sometimes. How do you go about dealing with that when you're working with another commentator?
I think the biggest skill in my job is a bit of an odd one in that we are paid to talk. And yet, actually, the most important skill is to know when not to talk, because primarily there's 2 things. One, I've always been aware that it's not about me. It's not about me. I'm not the one that's been grinding my backside off to be a professional tennis player. So it's very much about the players. I think the pictures do a lot of the talking, a lot of the time. And I've always thought that with television commentary, you want to be able to hear the sounds of the crowd. I've got 15,000 in front of me in Rod Laver Arena. They provide a bit of an atmosphere themselves without me coming in. And I think I've always sort of been of the philosophy that if I'm going to say something, 1, it needs to add to the coverage, and 2, it needs to be relevant, and 3, it probably needs to be not educational, but it needs to be something along the lines of what am I providing here to the viewer that is not obvious. That's quite, from my perspective, obviously that's quite the hard part of the job. So I'm always trying to just make sure I'm speaking at a relevant time. If there's nothing to say, a serve comes in and a return was missed for a couple of points, so be it. The pictures are there. People don't need to hear us. And I genuinely believe that one of the most irritating things for a viewer, in tennis is when you get a commentator that talks too much. And it's very easy to fall into that trap. And I probably at times have done that myself. But I think having done this for 17 years now, you definitely refine what I've done. And I've just tried to as much let the tennis do the talking as possible.
Amazing. I mean, there's so many crossovers. I'm a tennis coach, and we as coaches are very guilty of talking too much, and it's the silences that create the power. If you do let things happen when you do speak, it's more valuable, it's more powerful. I think that's great. And leading on to my main question really is, you've worked with lots of different commentators and pundits, and I know that you actually were working with Nick Kyrgios on his very first commentary gig at the Australian Open, and I must say I really, really enjoyed listening to him talk. But who's been your favourite commentator to work with?
I have a lot of respect for Jim Courier, I must say. Did quite a lot with Jim over the last 2 or 3 years at the US Open. I think Jim is articulate. I think he's very thoughtful. Jim's got a nice balance of light and shade as well. He's not afraid to sort of poke fun at himself. He will challenge you in a commentary box, which is nice as well. Always asks, the opinion of the lead commentator. So I think probably just all round, I find the most excitement working with Jim in terms of the people I've always worked with over the years. But, I've probably worked with close to 100, 150 different ex-players, ex-pros in my career. And it's amazing, I've obviously learned a lot from them significantly. I've learned a lot just because they've played the game, as Greg has, to the highest level. So that's been great. And I think a big part of a pundit's job, as Greg will be the first to tell you, is how you articulate your thoughts, because so many of these guys have achieved so many great things on a tennis court, but not all of them can translate that into the viewer, into passing it onto the viewer. And that is a very important skill. And I do think in my industry, at times, what has been lacking has been direction from perhaps producers, ex-producers, who aren't always that willing or understanding to actually help the former pros understand what is involved in the job. Because, it's one thing, as I say, being able to play the games to the highest level. It's another thing being able to articulate the ins and outs, the X's and O's of what is required to be a commentator. It's not the easiest thing in the world. And I do think probably, there have been times when a lot of ex-pros have just walked into the commentary box without really a whole lot of guidance. And I think that's probably been a little bit lacking, as Greg would probably tell you.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Nick. I mean, I remember starting up, I had no training, no nothing. It's sink or swim. I've been in this industry like yourself about 17, 18 years, and I haven't had one word of advice from anybody. And for me, I find that absolutely shocking, because you've got to do your own research. We don't come from a journalistic background like yourself, so it's a little bit harder. But I agree with you. Jim Courier is amazing what he does, and he always does his homework. That's what I love about Jim, because you got to remember, this is a guy who won 4 majors, was world #1, accomplished so much in his career, but he is just so data driven, reads all the notes, and is super professional. And that's why he's lasted in this industry and been at the top for so many years.
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story. So last year at the US Open, I was with Jim doing Tommy Paul, Alexander Bublik, 5 sets. It's 1:15 in the morning. Jim is still on his computer making notes about the match. And he's making notes about the match primarily because the next time he commentates, he wants to be aware of and remembering of what just happened. And I think for someone, as Greg says, who's achieved so much, I hold him in high regard for that, for taking the job as seriously as he does.
Nick, I've been lucky to do this for 30 years, and there are moments when you do it, when you pinch yourself, you can't believe you're there. I was at the 2008 final at Wimbledon, and we met on the concourse at Roland Garros, you might remember last year, a few days before that incredible final. I mean, when you're at that, and you're thinking, is this as good as I think it is? Or what were your reflections of that game now, almost 8, 9 months on?
Yeah, I think because I've been doing this as long as I have now, you do feel the moment more than perhaps I would when I started. When I started, he was like, yeah, you don't take it for granted. But obviously now, I think when you feel and you see a good match like that, it is, you know. And I was fortunate, obviously, as that developed, to sort of get that sense that this was an occasion that was something special. I think the match points that Alcaraz saved in the third set, it just felt like such a turning point, and you just had a feeling that we were going to go to 5 sets that day. And without doubt, probably the best match I've ever commentated on. Been fortunate to do some good ones, but I think in terms of sustained quality, I would say that match, I have never seen a match that has kept its level as high as that one has. There's been a lot of good tennis matches that I've seen over the years, and I'm sure plenty of good ones I haven't worked on, but I don't remember one where the level stayed as high as it did, as was the case in that Roland Garros final. And for me, yeah, that will probably stay with me the rest of my life.
Greg, what were your thoughts on that match? Is that the best match you've ever seen?
Oh, definitely, no question about it. I was lucky to be there for 5 live sports with Annabelle and Russell, and I was like, wow, this was an incredible weekend, because you had the drama of the women's finals before, where you had the hurricane wins, Sabalenka losing it mentally, Goff finding a way to win, and then the last match of the tournament, Alcaraz Sinner, being live there was so special, because we remember matches as kids. For me, the greatest match I remember was the Borg McEnroe 1980 final, and this surpassed it, because the quality from the first ball all the way to the final ball was exceptional. Their level didn't drop. There were no lapses. There were match points saved from Alcaraz. I mean, Agassi's sitting in the front row with his mouth wide open, can't believe what he's seeing out there. It was truly ridiculous standard of tennis. And we've got the new rivalry everybody's talking about, and these guys have dominated the slams really the last 2 years. It's been Alcaraz Sinner the last 8 in a row in the finals. 8 wins. It was Zverev being the only one last year who got to the finals. So it's always been one or the other who shared these finals. Also, Nick, I have to ask you this question also about Sinner Alcaraz. You're down there in Australia. What do you think? Who's playing better at the moment, Sinner or Alcaraz? And who are the guys that you think can possibly threaten these guys? Because right now they look like they're a crash course again to make another final.
Seems that way, doesn't it? Ben Shelton was very good today. Early rounds, I always feel like at the moment the early rounds of the majors for the sort of top 5, top 10, they're almost sort of easing their way in a little bit. Sinner was way too good tonight. Alcaraz had a tough one. I think the one takeaway from this week, guys, is that, and Greg will probably know this more than anyone, is that the conditions vary a lot day to night here. It's very quick during the day. You look at the ace count for some players, and I had a look today, sort of playing during the day. Sinner served 19 aces today. Now, I know that was nighttime, but the conditions here are quick this year. The balls are definitely flying a lot through the air. Players are holding serve a little more regularly than they were before, so it's fast. Sinner and Alcaraz have done what they need to do so far. I noticed that Alcaraz is on during the day tomorrow. The heat's coming, though. There's going to be 37 degrees here on Saturday. There's a heat wave, a mini heat wave coming, which obviously could throw a spanner in the works somewhat. Haven't seen a lot of the other guys. I haven't seen much of Taylor Fritz so far. He was pretty comfortable today. Zverev obviously plays Norrie tomorrow, but it's not reinventing the wheel right now, is it, to say that the top 2 are a very long way ahead. Even watching Daniil Medvedev, I've done both of Medvedev's matches so far. He's a guy coming in, people are talking about him in form. But even watching Medvedev yesterday, for me, he's still a long way away from the top 2, a very long way away from the top 2, despite the qualities that he has. I don't see him troubling them. Shelton's got a lot of weapons, and again, I didn't see his match today, but my colleagues who I spoke to said he was very impressive. He's going to be tough to break if the conditions stay as quick as they are. Yeah, we'll see. I think week one, generally, if you look at the draw so far, the majority of the big names have gone through.
We tried to pick a few dark horses, didn't we, Greg and Kevin? And we struggled. I mean, I mentioned De Minaur. His draw's pretty tough. Shelton, like you say, if that surface does stay quick, he's going to be tough. But these two, Alcaraz and Sinner, just seem to have another gear when they need it in those later rounds.
Yeah, and I think you've got a couple of guys on the sidelines as well, right? Who 6 months ago we were talking about as big challengers, not just Jack Draper. Arthur Fils was trending very much in the right direction 6 months ago. Now we haven't seen him pretty much since Wimbledon. He's got a pretty serious back problem, so that's a big shame. Jack's obviously on the way back. I believe he's been in Spain this week doing some work over there, so that's good news. And then you've got João Fonseca, who I know is still very young. We'll see. Hasn't really, obviously won in Basel last year, but he was injured here in the first round. I watched some of that match. He was hindered significantly by his back problem. That's not a great sign. He lost to Spitzieri, who now plays Sinner. So, yeah, we'll see. Zverev obviously is still in the conversation, but the longer that goes on...
And Novak, Nick. Don't forget Novak. He could still do it, could he?
Absolutely. Yeah, remiss of me to forget him, who was outstanding in round one, by the way. He was outstanding in round one. So, we'll see. Lots still to play out.
And on the women's side, there does seem to be slightly more players in that pool, that are rivals up at the top. What are you seeing there at the Aussie Open this year?
Definitely. I have done a couple of Sabalenka's matches. I've done one of Swiatek's so far. Iga looked a bit as if she was struggling a little bit in the first round. I don't know whether that was conditions or obviously first round for these guys is always a bit of finding your feet. Elena Rybakina's playing now, obviously being thought of pretty highly. Madison Keys defending her title, but you're right. There's a lot of names in there that can play well. Today, we saw some good tennis today on a couple of the outside courts. But as you said, the women's is a lot more open. There's no doubt about that. Sabalenka, I think, is a favourite, and I think everybody else is in the mix. Coco Gauff, she's still got a few vulnerabilities with her game. Again, played well at the United Cup. I didn't see much of the United Cup, but speaking to people here who did tell me that Coco was very impressive that week. So we'll see how she goes. As long as the serve can hold up, the second serve still can be a little bit of an issue, as we know. So, yeah, we'll see. But I think Sabalenka on a hard court has proven herself time and time again. She's the one to beat.
And the other thing is I want to talk a little bit about Emma Raducanu, obviously from a British perspective. Obviously most people are disappointed she lost in the second round to Potapova. We're hoping for the rematch with Sabalenka. But I think the press has been a little bit hard on her of late because she didn't have the ideal preparation. United Cup, she didn't even start at the event. She didn't even know if she was going to make it. Same with the Australian Open. And I think physically, from my point of view, I think that's where she is struggling. I don't think she's back to 100% health. And I think sometimes we just put too much expectation on Emma. What are your thoughts and what's the feel like about her performance down under in Australia?
I think you're right. I think everything I hear from here is that physically she is still a long way off where she needs to be by comparison to perhaps the players she wants to be matching. And I think, health-wise, obviously, it has been a challenge for her. I think getting stronger, finding ways to, provide a few more weapons for her own game to hurt the best players in the world is going to be a challenge. And then I guess for her, in some ways, it's finding ways to win on days when perhaps she's not playing her best tennis. That's the next step, isn't it? I think in many ways for her. Hopefully she can get a good run of events together. Last year she played a good run of events. Certainly, obviously, wish her all the best. I'm not party to what's going on behind the scenes day in, day out. But I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head. With the physical side, she is still behind her peers, the players that are above her physically in terms of being able to stay with those players, because you look at Sabalenka, you look at Swiatek, you look at Gauff, and athletically, they have definitely advanced their careers. Coco and I think Iga are the two best female athletes in this sport by quite a distance. They cover the ground so well, they move so well, and they've developed that side of their game. And I think obviously the injuries and the body is perhaps a little more frail for Emma at the moment. So there's a bit of work to do in that department.
And the other thing is, I think she has a good team around her. I think Francisco Ruig is not getting enough credit what he did because, Mark Petchey was with Emma at Wimbledon. She had a good run. Then if you look at the results from there on in, from Cincinnati all the way through, she pushed Sabalenka to 3 tight sets, lost 6 in the third. She had match points against Pegula. She lost to Krejcikova. She's had all these good sort of performances, but not the big breakthrough. So you can see her building momentum, but it always feels stop-start. And I think Roig is still the right person for her and is having that consistency of relationship. So, a lot of people have been talking about, Roig maybe shouldn't be continuing. He's not doing the right things. And I kind of disagree because his track record is unbelievable. And do you think he's still the right man for Emma? Because I believe he is.
listen, I can only tell you what I know, and from what I have heard here, that Francisco is an outstanding coach. Very, very, his attention to detail is of the highest order. Again, speaking to people that were at the United Cup, sort of in the behind the scenes, really speak highly of the way he goes about his business. Extremely knowledgeable, technically brilliant. So I would certainly agree with you, Greg. Again, I don't see this day to day because I'm not behind the scenes, but everything that I am hearing from reliable sources is that he is an outstanding coach, held in very high regard. And I think hopefully that's a partnership that has got some length to it, because I would suspect that whoever he works with, and of course it's not no coach is right for everyone, but I think he has a track record that is excellent, and I think is someone that most players would probably want in their corner.
These things take time, don't they? And I think working with a coach, you need to give it a chance, and hopefully they continue to work together and do good things. But wanted to kind of flip on to talking about something that Ben Shelton spoke about in one of the press conferences about college tennis. And me being a coach, working with teenage players who are kind of making decisions as to what to do in their career, whether to play college tennis or do something else. And we're seeing so many very, very high level tennis players coming through the US college system. What Ben was saying was how it's not just about the tennis, but it's about, respect for teammates and being a part of a team, which if you just go straight onto the tour, it's quite a lonely world and you become almost quite selfish. What do you think about the college system at the moment, Nick?
Well, I think we had 25 players in college, didn't we? Which was a record in round one here on the men's side. Now, if you think about it, we often talk about countries, nations. That's 25 players is about a fifth of the draw that have played college at some point. So it's a trend that's been continuing in the last 2 or 3 years. We know that there are, personally speaking, closer to home for us, very good examples. Cam Norrie, Jacob Fernley, great examples. There's more to come as well. The likes of Ollie Tarvet, who are coming out of college pretty soon. I think he's going to be pretty good. So, this is as you say, this has been a trend that's continued. I did hear what he had to say, and he spoke very articulately about it. Can't argue with what he said. I think just to sort of provide a bit of counterbalance, this is another thing I heard the other day, was that obviously the one thing you get at college is you get treated very well. Now, when you come out of college and you turn professional and you go and play futures, which is what most people do, that suddenly is a fairly lonely existence. So I completely agree with Ben on everything he said. And I think what he was doing, he was comparing college life with tour life. But not everyone goes from college life straight to tour life, because there's a road you have to travel in between. Ben made it pretty quickly because he was such a great player. But I remember speaking to a couple of other people who actually said to me, you know what, I love college. It was so good. And when I came out and I played the futures in Glasgow and I was on court 6, it was freezing cold and there was no one there. That was a massive shock for me. So I think you sort of have to look at it on both sides. Completely agree. College is a fantastic system. And I totally understand what Ben was saying, and he's right. But I also think he made the jump so quickly to the tour. He was the exception. Not everyone makes that jump as quickly as he does. Jacob Fernley did as well, so he was probably on the other side of it. But for the majority of college players who come out, in many ways, I actually think it's a little bit of a shock to go and play futures, because that's what you have to do in challenges, because there is not the support system out of college to go and play futures that you've had over the last 4 years in America, because you are looked after in America. Undoubtedly, if you're at the right college, you are given a program, a strength and conditioning coach, and everything else. The one thing I've always loved about college tennis is not just the amount of competition, but I think it's what you get out of it. I think when you come out of 4 years, very often you have a sponsor. Very often you have a sponsor when you've played college tennis, because the connections in the States, the universities are held in such high regard within the cities. There is such a, let's be honest about it, there's a fair bit of wealth at times in the States. And I think high-level athletes are treated and are held in high esteem in America. And that's, for me, again, I think a huge plus side to it, in that once you've done your 4 years, you're not just thrown to the wolves. You're not just going out on your own. There is a support network. How often do we hear these guys that have played college tennis are able to go back to their college. Cam Norrie spends a lot of time in Texas still. He goes back to Texas a lot because his family there. So a lot of upside. I love what Ben said, but he was sort of comparing college tennis direct to the tour. And I think my sort of, as I say, my slight caveat with that would be is that it's not always one jump to the other. Are a couple of stages you've got to go through to get there.
Well, the other thing I'd like to add on to that as well, Nick, is that let's not forget the NIL money. So some of these guys are getting $150,000 a year. And imagine you play 4 years. Right there, you have nearly $600,000 just to fund your pro career in itself. Even after taxes, maybe $300,000-400,000. But that's why so many players are going to college. And on top of that, you can play till you're mid to late 30s, like 35, 36, you can still play at a high standard. And I know Kevin wants to ask about one guy who's a little bit older at 40 having some great results.
But do you know what, Greg? Just before we go on to that, João Fonseca was offered, I was told, $1 million to go and play US college tennis because he was the big shining star of the rising star. They all wanted him to go over there. So imagine, we never thought we'd see a day when kids would be offered mega money to go and play college tennis. So the world is changing, isn't it, Nick? It's an interesting place for a young player to be.
Definitely. And I think as well, not just money, guys, but I think what's happened now is the ATP have got into bed with college tennis a lot more. The accelerator program, I'm sure you guys are aware of that, is very, very prominent now. If you finish top 10, top 20 in college, there are wild cards available to you for challenges. There is I don't know the exact details, I haven't got it in front of me, but the accelerator program has been really important, and the ATP are working very closely with college tennis because of what's happening, because the more players are coming through, they are trying to establish links. The LTA have now got a coach. I think Mark Hilton works specifically with the college tennis scene, so he's a direct contact between the two. So, yeah, I think obviously we're seeing more and more players come through, and the ATP Tour are definitely looking at that and trying to facilitate and enable college players to have opportunities at challenger level, so they can prove themselves as they have done at college.
Just to wrap this up, as Greg alluded to, just finish by chatting about Mr. Wawrinka, who's won a 5-setter, which is incredible, and also Mr. Djokovic, who John McEnroe says he can't win another major. What are your thoughts on that, Nick?
No, I'm probably far be it from me to argue with John McEnroe, but I probably listen. If Sinner and Alcaraz get hurt this week, who's your favourite? And I'm pretty sure it's one Serbian guy. That would be my money would be. So who knows? 4 semi-finals last year, couldn't have been much closer. Can he beat those two over the best of 5 sets in hot conditions here? I would probably lean no personally. I think the evidence has been there that last year those guys were just too good for him. So do I think he's going to win this week here? No. Are Alcaraz and Sinner going to stay fit for the rest of the year? We don't know that. That's the unknown, isn't it? So never say never, right? I have long since given up making judgments on Novak Djokovic, who, as we know, is probably the greatest male player ever to pick up a racket.
Greg, you think he can win, don't you? Djokovic, you think there's a possibility at some point this year he could get a slam?
Well, I think Wimbledon is his best shot to win a major. I think if you look at the way he plays, and if he only has to beat one of them on a given day, I think it's possible. And getting back to Nick's point about the Australian Open, if he plays Sinner and Alcaraz, those will be night matches. They will not be during the heat of the day. And so far in his opening 2 matches, he hasn't dropped a set. It's been easy. Now it gets tough from the 3rd round on. So we're going to know where Novak is. And I think McEnroe, what his opinion was, is he doesn't think after 5 matches, he can beat Sinner Alcaraz back to back. So that's the interesting thing. But I also wanted to give a little bit of kudos more to Stan the man Wawrinka. 5 sets, 40 years of age, into the 3rd round. Final set tiebreaker, 10-3. Magnus Norman, the coach that changed his life and made him a Grand Slam winner on multiple occasions, winning 3 of the 4 majors. What a moment. For me personally, that has been the best moment of the Australian Open to date, because people just don't realize how difficult it is physically, mentally, to keep the hunger, and doing this on his last ever Australian Open. He got the wild card. He deserved it. And it's been a wonderful story. And I'm wondering down under, is it the same feeling for Stan at the moment, Nick?
I think so. I mean, I didn't actually see much of it today because I was obviously doing the Sinner match, but I think absolutely. I think obviously the Australian Open held off the wild card, didn't they? They wanted to see how he played in the United Cup. And I actually think probably on reflection, the wins he had in the United Cup have been of huge value to him, haven't they? Because that volume of those couple of matches that he had I think was it Perth or Sydney, I can't remember, have obviously given him a mileage to actually come here and win these matches here. So pleased for him. I hear he worked very hard in November, December, so I'm hearing here. Doesn't want to let it go yet. Still loves the passion, got the passion for it, and why not, right? If you still want to play and you still want to get out there, who are we to tell these guys to stop? So great for him, very happy for him. It was absolutely pumping from the little bits I could see on Kia Arena this evening. So yeah, great for him, and we'll see how he goes, if he can go any further.
Last question of the night before we let you go, Nick, and we really appreciate you taking the time. Men's winner, women's winner. Who are you picking for the Aussie Open?
Sinner and Sabalenka.
Okay, so you went for number one. You didn't really put yourself on the chopping block there, did you?
Not really. I've got evidence, but my evidence is in front of me, and from what I've seen so far, those two are, and let's be honest, those two for me are at the moment on hard courts. I know Alcaraz won the US Open, but for me right now, I just think those two are a cut above.
Nick, thanks for joining us on Off Court Cuts with myself, Kevin, and Ashley. Thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with the rest of the commentator. We'll be listening on TNT as well as the World Feed, and we look forward to having you in the future again. Thanks so much.
No worries, guys.